The fluorescent lights of the security office felt like interrogation lamps. Gray Webb sat with his hands folded on the cheap laminate table, watching his reflection fragment in the two-way mirror. After 12 years at Hartwell Manufacturing, he'd walked these halls thousands of times. Now they felt like a maze with no exit. "Mr. Webb, we have video evidence." Gerald Thompson, the head of security, slid a manila folder across the table. "Copper wire, electronics components, aluminum sheeting, all logged out under your employee code. 14 separate incidents over the past 6 months. Gray's throat tightened. "That's impossible. I've never—" "The logs don't lie." Thompson's voice carried no malice, just exhaustion. He'd probably done this 100 times before. "You've been with us a long time, Gray. If you cooperate, maybe we can work something out." "I didn't take anything." Gray's voice cracked. Through the office window he could see his workstation, the desk where he'd kept a photo of Sarah and the kids, where he'd eaten lunch for over a decade, where he'd felt safe. "Someone's using my code. Check the cameras more carefully. I'm here every day, you know my schedule." "We did check." Thompson opened the folder. Grainy security footage screenshots showed a figure in a Hartwell jacket, face obscured by a cap, loading materials into a cart. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. on multiple dates. These were taken during third shift. Your access card shows you entering the building each of these nights. Gray felt his world tilting. "I work first shift. I'm home with my kids by 6 every single night. I haven't worked past 5 in 3 years, not since my wife." He stopped, the familiar grief closing his throat. Thompson's expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry about Sarah. Everyone knows what you've been through, but I have to follow company policy." "What about the actual third shift security footage? The parking lot cameras? They'll show my car wasn't even here." "We checked. The lot cameras were experiencing technical difficulties during these time periods." Thompson closed the folder. "Look, Gray, I don't make these decisions. HR and legal are involved now. Best thing you can do is tell us what happened to the materials, help us recover what we can." "I can't tell you what happened because I don't know." Gray stood, his chair scraping against linoleum. 12 years I've worked here. 12 years and you're not even going to investigate?" "We did investigate. The evidence points to you." "Then the evidence is wrong." By 5 o'clock, Gray was escorted from the building with his personal items in a cardboard box. His supervisor, Janet, wouldn't meet his eyes. His co-workers whispered behind machinery. 12 years of loyalty, of showing up early and staying late when they needed him, of perfect attendance, gone in an afternoon. The April rain started as he crossed the parking lot. Gray loaded the box into his 10-year-old Honda and sat behind the wheel watching water stream down the windshield. He had $847 in checking, maybe another $200 in savings. The rent was $1,450 due in a week. Lucy needed new shoes. Her toes were cramping in the old ones. Milo had a field trip next month, already paid for, thank heavens. His phone buzzed. It was a text from his mother-in-law. "Need to talk about the children. Come by tonight." Gray closed his eyes. Not tonight, please, not tonight, but he knew Charmaine Logan didn't make requests, she made demands. The house Gray rented was a small bungalow in a neighborhood that had seen better decades. The porch sagged slightly, the paint peeled in strips, but it had 3 bedrooms and a backyard where Milo could kick his soccer ball. More importantly, it was theirs, not Charmaine and Edward's pristine mansion in Riverside Heights, where Sarah had grown up, and where her parents still believed their grandchildren belonged. "Dad!" Lucy met him at the door, all 8 years of her wrapped around his waist. She had Sarah's dark curls, her laugh, her way of tilting her head when she was thinking hard about something. Milo ate the last granola bar, and it was supposed to be mine for tomorrow. "Did not!" 10-year-old Milo appeared from the living room controller in hand, paused video game frozen on the TV. "You ate it yesterday and blamed it on me." "I did not, you liar!" "Kids." Gray set down his box, trying to inject energy he didn't feel into his voice. How about we make pasta for dinner, the kind with the... Can we have real dinner? Milo asked. Like order pizza? Pizza was $25. That was 3 lunches worth of groceries. Pasta's real dinner, buddy. We'll make it special, add some of those meatballs from the freezer. Milo's face fell, but he didn't argue. He was learning too quickly what they could and couldn't afford. At 10, he shouldn't have to calculate the cost of pepperoni. While water boiled, Gray helped Lucy with her math homework at the kitchen table. She struggled with fractions, her small face scrunching with frustration. I don't get it. Why can't they just be normal numbers? They are normal numbers, sweetheart. They're just showing you parts of things. He drew circles on her homework page, dividing them into sections. See, if we have 1 pizza. Are we having pizza? Her eyes lit up. It's an example. His heart ached. If we had 1 pizza and cut it into 8 slices and you ate 2 slices, what fraction did you eat? She stared at the paper. 2/8? Exactly. You're getting it. Milo appeared in the doorway. Grandma called my phone. She said you're supposed to bring us over tonight. Gray's jaw tightened. Charmaine had given Milo a phone for emergencies 6 months ago. It had become her direct line to the children, bypassing Gray entirely. Did she say why? She said it's important. Milo shifted his weight. Can we go? She said she'd have cookies. Of course she did. Charmaine Logan wielded sugar like a weapon, each cookie a small reminder that she could give the children things Gray couldn't. After dinner, Gray said, go wash up. The pasta was nearly ready when his own phone rang. Charmaine's name appeared on the screen like a summons. Gray. Her voice carried its usual crisp authority. I expect you at 7 o'clock. We need to discuss the children's future. Charmaine, I've had a really difficult day. Yes, Edward heard about your employment situation. All the more reason we need to talk. 7 o'clock. Don't be late. She hung up before he could respond. Gray stood over the boiling pot, watching pasta swirl in cloudy water, and felt the walls closing in. The Logan estate sat behind iron gates in Riverside Heights, where every lawn looked professionally manicured, and every house seemed to judge the visitor. Gray had always felt like an intruder here, even when Sarah was alive. Especially when Sarah was alive. Remember your manners, he told the kids as they pulled up the circular drive, and stay together. The front door opened before they could knock. Charmaine Logan stood in the entrance, perfectly coiffed silver hair, pearls at her throat, expression carved from ice. Children, go to the kitchen. Maria made cookies. Her eyes never left Gray. We need to speak in the study. Can't this wait? No. Lucy and Milo scrambled toward the kitchen, Milo throwing Gray an uncertain look over his shoulder. Gray followed Charmaine down the hall to Edward's study, where Sarah's father sat behind a massive oak desk like a judge at sentencing. Gray. Edward didn't stand or offer a handshake. Sit. Gray remained standing. What's this about? Your employment termination, Charmaine said, closing the door. Or should we call it what it really is? You were fired for theft. I was framed. I didn't steal anything. Of course you'd say that. Edward leaned back in his leather chair. But the fact remains, you're unemployed, you have 2 children to support, and you're living in that house. It's a home, Gray said quietly. It's where Sarah wanted to raise them. Sarah's gone. Charmaine's voice cracked slightly, the only sign of grief she ever showed. And you're clearly unable to provide for her children properly. We've been patient, Gray, very patient, but this situation can't continue. Ice flooded Gray's veins. What situation? Edward opened a folder on his desk. We've consulted with our attorney. Given your current circumstances, unemployment, inadequate housing, questionable moral character, we believe we have grounds to petition for custody. The words hit like physical blows. You can't be serious. We're completely serious, Charmaine said. Those children deserve stability. A proper education, opportunities, things you can't give them. I'm their father. And we're their grandparents. Edward's voice hardened. We can provide everything Sarah would have wanted for them. Private schools, music lessons, travel, a future that doesn't involve struggling to pay rent every month. Gray gripped the back of the chair, knuckles white. Sarah chose me. She chose our life together. She didn't want them raised in this sterile museum. Sarah was idealistic, Charmaine said. She thought love conquered all, but look where that idealism got her. Dead at 34, leaving her children with a man who can't even hold a job. The cruelty of it stole his breath. That's not fair. Fair? Charmaine's composure cracked. Fair was Sarah marrying someone from her own world, someone who could have taken care of her properly. Fair was our daughter not dying in a car accident while driving that cheap car you insisted was good enough. Fair was... She stopped, trembling. Edward stood, placing a hand on his wife's shoulder. What Charmaine means is that we want what's best for Lucy and Milo. We believe that's living here with us, where they can have the life they deserve. Over my dead body, Gray whispered. That can be arranged, legally speaking. Edward's expression remained neutral. We're not heartless, Gray. We're prepared to offer you visitation rights every other weekend, perhaps. Holidays could be negotiated. Visitation? Gray laughed, a broken sound. Of my own children. If you fight this, it will get ugly, Charmaine said, regaining her composure. Our attorneys are very good. They'll examine everything, your finances, your fitness as a parent, the conditions those children are living in. We'll win Gray, and if you make it difficult, we'll ensure the custody agreement is far less generous. Gray looked at these people who had raised the woman he loved and saw strangers. Sarah had spent years trying to bridge the gap between her privileged upbringing and the life she'd chosen with Gray. She'd fought her parents' disapproval, their subtle and not-so-subtle suggestions that she'd married beneath her station, and now they wanted to erase him entirely. I need to think, he said finally. You have 1 week, Edward said. We'll file papers on Friday unless you agree to our terms voluntarily. It would be easier on the children if this were amicable. Gray walked out without another word. In the kitchen, he found Lucy and Milo at the counter, faces sticky with chocolate chips, Maria the housekeeper fussing over them with napkins. Time to go, kids. Already? Lucy's face fell. But Grandma said we could watch a movie. Not tonight, sweetheart. We need to get home. In the car, Milo was quiet until they were halfway home. Are we in trouble? No, buddy. Why would you ask that? You looked mad and Grandma's been saying things. Gray's hands tightened on the wheel. What kind of things? Just that maybe we'd be happier living with them, that their house is nicer, that we could have our own rooms and a swimming pool and stuff. And what do you think about that? Milo stared out the window. I don't know. It would be cool to have a pool. Each word was a small knife. Would you want to live there instead of with me? I didn't say that. Milo's voice rose defensively. I just meant... I don't know what I meant. Lucy piped up from the back seat. I want to stay with you, Daddy. Grandma's house is too clean. I'm always worried I'll break something. Gray met her eyes in the rearview mirror. You won't have to live there, sweetheart. I promise. But even as he said it, he wasn't sure it was a promise he could keep. The job search became Gray's full-time occupation, each day blurring into the next. He dropped the kids at school, then spent hours at the library applying to positions online, his ancient laptop barely functional. Manufacturing jobs, warehouse positions, retail management, anything that might pay enough to keep them afloat. But word had spread. Hartwell Manufacturing was one of the city's largest employers, and the industrial community was tight-knit. When Gray's name came up in background checks, there were questions. The theft allegations, though never prosecuted, followed him like a shadow. "We've decided to go with another candidate. The position has been filled. We'll keep your resume on file." Each rejection chipped away at his hope. The bills piled up. First the electricity. He managed to get an extension. Then the water bill, the internet, which he needed for job hunting, the car insurance. He sold Sarah's jewelry, the pieces her parents hadn't already reclaimed. Her wedding ring he kept hidden in his drawer, unable to part with that final connection. He started visiting food banks, swallowing his pride to stand in line with strangers, accepting boxes of dented cans and day-old bread. He learned which grocery stores marked down produce on Sunday evenings, which restaurants gave away food at closing time if you asked politely. Lucy's shoes finally split at the seam. Gray bought her a pair at the thrift store, slightly too big, telling her she'd grow into them. She smiled bravely and said they were perfect, even though he saw her limping by the end of the day. Milo's birthday came. Gray made a cake from a box mix, let him choose a movie from the library's free DVD collection, wrapped up a soccer ball he'd found at a yard sale for $3. Milo thanked him, but Gray saw him looking at his phone, at the pictures Charmaine had sent of the expensive gaming system she'd bought for when you come visit. The week Edward had given him came and went. On Friday, a process server appeared at the door with court documents. The Logan family was petitioning for full custody based on inadequate living conditions and parental unfitness. Gray sat at the kitchen table after the kids were asleep, reading through the legal filing. They documented everything: the state of the house, his unemployment, interviews with Milo and Lucy's teachers about missed school supplies, even a statement from the landlord about late rent. He couldn't afford an attorney. The Free Legal Aid Office had a 3-month waiting list. His phone rang at 11 p.m. Charmaine's number. "Have you received the papers?" Her voice was almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. "Yes." "It doesn't have to be this way, Gray. We're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to help those children. By taking them from their father. By giving them the life Sarah would have wanted." She paused. "You know I'm right. Deep down you know you're failing them. The children won't say it because they love you, but they deserve better." Gray hung up without responding. He sat in the dark kitchen of the home he couldn't afford, surrounded by bills he couldn't pay, fighting a legal battle he couldn't win, and for the first time since Sarah's death, he let himself break. The sobs came from somewhere deep, wrenching and raw, 3 years of grief and fear and exhaustion pouring out in the silence. When he finally stopped, dawn was breaking through the window. He had to wake the kids for school in an hour, had to keep going, keep fighting, keep pretending everything would somehow work out. He splashed water on his face, made coffee with grounds he'd reused twice, and put on the mask of a father who had everything under control. The court hearing was scheduled for June 15th, 3 weeks away. Gray spent every spare moment preparing, researching family law in the library, printing out cases where fathers had successfully fought custody battles. But every case he found involved fathers with resources, money for lawyers, stable employment, family support. He had none of those things. Mrs. Patterson, Lucy's second-grade teacher, called him in for a conference. She was kind but direct. "Lucy's struggling, Mr. Webb. Her homework has been incomplete. She's fallen asleep in class twice this week, and yesterday she cried for 20 minutes during recess." Gray felt his stomach drop. "Did she say why?" "She said she doesn't want to leave you, but her grandmother keeps telling her how much better things would be at their house." Mrs. Patterson's expression softened. "I'm required to report concerns about a child's welfare to the school counselor, you understand. But between you and me, that child adores you. Whatever you're dealing with, she needs stability right now. She needs to know her world isn't falling apart." "I'm trying," Gray said quietly. "I'm trying so hard." "I know you are, but trying isn't always enough. Sometimes we need help." "Help?" The word echoed in his mind as he drove home, but who could help? His own parents had passed years ago. He had a brother in Oregon he hadn't spoken to in 5 years. Sarah's friends had gradually drifted away after her death, uncomfortable with grief, with single fatherhood, with his diminished circumstances. He was alone. That afternoon he picked up Milo from soccer practice. The boy climbed into the car, muddy and exhausted, and immediately asked, "Can we stop at McDonald's? Coach said everyone's getting dinner together." Gray checked his wallet. $18 until his unemployment check came through. "Not tonight, buddy. We have leftovers at home." "There's no leftovers. We finished the pasta yesterday." "Then I'll make something else." "There's nothing in the fridge, Dad. I checked this morning." Gray pulled over, suddenly unable to breathe. Milo was right. The refrigerator held condiments, half a gallon of milk, some wilted lettuce. The freezer was empty, except for ice. "We'll figure it out," he managed. "Just ask Grandma and Grandpa for help." Milo's voice cracked with frustration. "They have money. They want to help us. Why won't you let them?" "It's complicated, Milo." "No, it's not. You're just too proud." The boy was crying now, angry tears. "Mom would have let us eat. Mom would have—" "Mom's not here." The words came out sharper than Gray intended. The silence that followed was crushing. Milo stared at him, then grabbed his soccer bag and got out of the car. They were 3 blocks from home. Gray watched his son walk away down the sidewalk, shoulders hunched, and felt like the worst father in the world. He drove slowly behind Milo until the boy reached their house and went inside. Then Gray sat in the driveway, head against the steering wheel, and tried to figure out how everything had gone so wrong. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, job interview opportunity. Lakewood Distribution Center. Contact Ray Sullivan, 555-0147. Gray stared at the message. He hadn't applied to Lakewood. He'd checked their website weeks ago, and they weren't hiring. It had to be spam, or a scam, or... He called the number. "Sullivan." A gruff voice answered. "Hi, this is Gray Webb. I received a text about an interview." "Yeah, heard you were looking for work. Warehouse management position. Can you come in tomorrow at 9 a.m.? Yes. Yes, I can, but I didn't apply. Someone put in a good word for you. Address is 4500 Industrial Parkway. Don't be late." The line went dead. Gray sat in the car phone in hand, trying to process what had just happened. A job lead, appearing out of nowhere, exactly when he needed it most. It felt too good to be true, but he couldn't afford to be suspicious of good fortune right now. That evening, he made grilled cheese sandwiches with the last of the bread and cheese, stretched with tomato soup from a can. Milo ate in silence, still angry. Lucy chatted about school, trying to fill the uncomfortable quiet. After dinner, Gray found Milo in his room pretending to read. "Buddy, I'm sorry about what I said." Milo didn't look up. "Whatever." Gray sat on the edge of the bed. "You're right that this is hard. You're right that I don't have all the answers, but I need you to understand something. Your grandparents' help comes with strings attached. They want to take you away from me." "Maybe that would be better," Milo muttered. The words landed like a physical blow. "Do you really believe that?" Milo finally met his eyes, and Gray saw fear beneath the anger. "I don't know what I believe anymore, Dad. I just know I'm tired of being hungry and having holes in my shoes, and watching you pretend everything's fine when it's not." Gray had no answer for that, because his 10-year-old son was right. He had been pretending, putting on a brave face while their world crumbled, and the kids saw through it. "I have a job interview tomorrow," he said finally. "It's a real possibility. Things might get better." "You've said that before." "I know, but I'm still trying, Milo. I'm still fighting for us. I need you to believe in that." Milo turned back to his book, and Gray knew he'd lost this round. He stood to leave, then paused in the doorway. "I love you, son. More than anything, and I'm not giving up on our family." "Love doesn't pay the bills, Dad." Gray closed the door softly and leaned against the hallway wall. 10 years old, and Milo had already learned that lesson. He went to his own room and pulled out his one good shirt, ironing out the wrinkles for tomorrow's interview. As he worked, he thought about Milo's words. Love doesn't pay the bills, but maybe, just maybe, it was enough to keep fighting. The Lakewood Distribution Center was a sprawling warehouse complex on the industrial edge of the city. Gray arrived 15 minutes early, shirt pressed, resume printed at the library, trying to project competence he didn't entirely feel. The receptionist directed him to a second-floor office. Ray Sullivan turned out to be a barrel-chested man in his 50s, with graying red hair and the weathered face of someone who'd spent decades in physical labor. Gray Webb. Sullivan shook his hand with a grip that could crush steel. "Have a seat. Coffee?" "Thank you." Gray accepted a mug, noting the office's simplicity. No expensive furniture or corporate artwork, just filing cabinets and a desk covered in logistics reports. "So," Sullivan leaned back in his chair, "tell me about Hartwell Manufacturing." Gray had prepared for this question, but his carefully rehearsed explanation died in his throat when he saw Sullivan's expression. He already knew. Of course he knew. "I was accused of theft," Gray said simply. "I didn't do it. Someone used my access codes to steal materials during third shift. I worked first shift and never passed 5, but the logs showed my credentials. The security footage was too grainy to definitively identify anyone. They fired me rather than investigate properly." "I know," Sullivan said. Gray blinked. "You know?" "Did some asking around. Found out you were set up by Dale Kramer, third shift supervisor. He'd been skimming materials for months, selling them to a scrap dealer. Needed a fall guy when inventory discrepancies got too large to hide. You were convenient, a good employee, reliable, wouldn't be suspected until it was too late." The information hit Gray like a freight train. "How did you—" "I know people. Kramer got sloppy, bragged to the wrong person. Your name came up as collateral damage." Sullivan sipped his coffee. "Hartwell won't admit their mistake. Too much liability, but I know you're clean." Gray felt 3 months of tension begin to uncoil. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm offering you a job. Warehouse manager starting Monday, $48,000 a year, plus benefits. Standard hours, no third shift unless you want overtime." It was more than Gray had made at Hartwell. It was salvation. "I don't understand," Gray said slowly. "You don't know me. Why would you—" "I told you. Someone put in a good word." "Who?" Sullivan smiled slightly. "Let's call him a mutual friend who believes in second chances." "I don't have any friends who—" Gray stopped. The text message, the mysterious tip. "I need to know who I'm indebted to." "You're not indebted to anyone," Sullivan said firmly. "This is a legitimate job offer based on your qualifications and work history. The person who made the connection prefers to remain anonymous. That's their choice. Your choice is whether to accept the position." Gray stared at this stranger, offering him a lifeline. Every instinct screamed that it was too good to be true, that there had to be a catch, but Sullivan's eyes were steady and honest. "Can I ask you something?" Gray said. "Have you ever been in a position where you lost everything? Where people assumed the worst about you, and there was nothing you could do to prove them wrong?" Sullivan's expression shifted, something old and painful crossing his face. "Yeah, I have." "What happened?" "Someone gave me a chance when I didn't deserve one. Changed my life." He stood, extending his hand again. "So, do you want the job or not?" Gray stood shaking Sullivan's hand firmly. "Yes, thank you. I won't let you down." "I know you won't." Walking out of the warehouse, Gray felt lighter than he had in months. He sat in his car and called his lawyer at legal aid. Well, the public defender who'd finally agreed to review his custody case. "Mr. Webb, I was just about to call you. I received the Logan family's financial disclosures. I have to be honest, this is going to be difficult. They're presenting a very strong case." "I got a job," Gray said. "Warehouse manager, $48,000 a year, benefits, Starts Monday. Silence. Then, that changes things significantly. Send me the offer letter as soon as you get it. Employment stability is crucial in these cases. Gray hung up and sat in the parking lot, watching forklifts move pallets in the distance. Someone had helped him. A mysterious benefactor who knew about his situation, knew about Dale Kramer, knew enough to connect him with Ray Sullivan. Why? The question nagged at him, but beneath it was gratitude so profound it brought tears to his eyes. Someone believed in him. Someone thought he was worth saving. He drove to the kids' school, arriving early for pickup. When Lucy ran out, backpack bouncing, he scooped her into a hug that made her squeal with surprise. "Dad, you're squishing me!" "Sorry, sweetheart, just happy to see you." Milo emerged more slowly, still wearing yesterday's sullenness like armor. Gray waited until they were in the car before making his announcement. "I got a job." Lucy cheered. Milo looked skeptical. "For real?" "Yes, for real. Start Monday. It's a good job, buddy. Better than before. We're going to be okay." "We're still going to court with Grandma and Grandpa." "Yes. But now I can prove I'm capable of taking care of you both, that I can provide for this family." Milo said nothing, but Gray saw the tiniest crack in his armor, a flicker of hope quickly suppressed. That evening, Gray made a real dinner. Chicken thighs he'd splurged on, rice, frozen vegetables. After the kids went to bed, he sat at the kitchen table with a calculator and the household budget spreadsheet he'd been maintaining. With the new salary, they could make rent, could buy groceries without anxiety, could replace Lucy's shoes and Milo's worn-out backpack, could breathe. He thought about his mysterious benefactor. Ray Sullivan had said someone who believed in second chances. The phrase resonated. How many people were walking around, carrying the weight of others' mistakes, needing just one person to believe in them? Gray made a decision in that quiet kitchen, surrounded by bills he could now pay. If he made it through this, when he made it through this, he would do the same for someone else. He would pay forward the kindness shown to him. The universe, he was learning, worked in mysterious ways. The custody hearing loomed like a storm on the horizon. Gray started at Lakewood Distribution on Monday, throwing himself into the work with desperate intensity. Ray Sullivan proved to be a demanding but fair boss, and the warehouse crew accepted Gray quickly when they realized he wasn't afraid of physical labor. By the end of week 2, Gray had his first paycheck. He cashed it at the bank and stood staring at the bills in his hand. Real money, earned through honest work, enough to cover rent with money left over. He bought new shoes for Lucy, a proper pair that fit. He stocked the refrigerator. He paid the overdue electric bill. Small victories, but they felt monumental. Charmaine called the night before the custody hearing, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. "I understand you've found employment. How convenient, just in time for court." "It's a good job, Charmaine. Stable income, benefits, everything you claimed I couldn't provide." 1 month of employment doesn't erase 3 months of instability. The children have been living in inadequate conditions. The children have been living with their father who loves them and is doing everything in his power to provide for them. "Love?" she said bitterly. "Sarah loved you too, and look where that got her." The accusation hung between them, the terrible unspoken blame Charmaine had been nursing for 3 years. Gray kept his voice steady. "Sarah died because a truck ran a red light and hit her car. Not because of me, not because of our choices, not because of anything except cruel random chance, and she would be furious at you for using her death to try to take her children." Charmaine's breath caught. "You don't know what she would have wanted." "I know she chose this life, chose me. Chose raising our kids in a home filled with love, instead of your cold mansion. I know she fought you for years about your expectations and your standards and your need to control everything." His voice softened. "I know she missed you, that she wished you could accept her choices, that she died, hoping you'd eventually understand." Silence stretched. Then Charmaine spoke, her voice breaking. "I just want them safe. I want them to have everything. They have what matters. They have a father who would do anything for them. They have memories of a mother who adored them. They have a home." He paused. "You can be part of that home, Charmaine. You and Edward both, but not like this. Not by tearing us apart." "The hearing is tomorrow at 10, she said, and hung up. Gray stood holding the phone, feeling the weight of everything unsaid between him and his late wife's parents. Sarah had spent so much energy trying to build bridges between her old life and her new one. Now Gray was trying to preserve what she'd built, but the foundation felt so fragile. That night, he tucked Lucy into bed and sat beside her. "Daddy," her voice was small, "are Grandma and Grandpa going to take us away tomorrow?" "No, sweetheart, I won't let that happen." "But Milo said they might. He said the judge could decide." Gray stroked her hair, so like Sarah's, it made his heart ache. "Sometimes judges have to make hard decisions, but they also listen to what kids want. If the judge asks you tomorrow, you tell the truth about how you feel, okay? No one can be mad at you for telling the truth." "I want to stay with you." Her eyes filled with tears. "I miss Grandma and Grandpa, but I don't want to live there. It doesn't feel like home." "I know, baby. I know." She fell asleep holding his hand. Gray stayed until her breathing was deep, and even then checked on Milo. The boy was still awake, staring at the ceiling. "Can't sleep." Gray sat on the edge of the bed. "What if we lose tomorrow?" "We won't." "But what if we do?" Milo sat up, facing him. "What if the judge says we have to live with them?" Gray wanted to promise it wouldn't happen, wanted to shield his son from the uncertainty, but Milo deserved honesty. "Then I'll fight it. I'll appeal. I'll do whatever it takes, and I'll visit you every chance I get, and I'll work toward getting you back." He met Milo's eyes. "But I don't think it's going to come to that. I think the judge will see that you belong with me." "Because you have a job now." "Because I'm your father and I love you. And I've been doing this alone for 3 years, and we've made it work. The job helps, but that's not why we're a family." Milo lay back down. "I'm sorry I said that stuff before about being hungry and whatever. You were right to say it. Things were hard. They might get hard again sometimes, but we're going to be okay, buddy." "Promise." Gray thought about all the promises he'd made and kept since Sarah's death. All the tiny acts of faith required to parent through grief. "I promise I'll never stop fighting for you and your sister. That's a promise I can keep." The courthouse was a gray building downtown, all marble and fluorescent lights and echoing hallways. Gray wore his interview suit, the kids in their Sunday clothes, sitting on a wooden bench outside Family Court 3. His public defender, a harried woman named Jessica Moss, reviewed her notes one more time. "Remember, be honest, be calm, and don't let them provoke you. The judge will likely want to speak with the children separately. Trust that they'll tell the truth." Edward and Charmaine appeared with their attorney, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit who looked like he ate public defenders for breakfast. Charmaine's eyes were red, but her expression was carefully composed. Edward looked grim and determined. "All rise. Family Court is now in session, the Honorable Judge Linda Moreno presiding." Judge Moreno was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd seen every variation of family dysfunction imaginable. She reviewed the case file, then looked at both parties. "This is a petition for custody modification filed by Charmaine and Edward Logan regarding their grandchildren, Lucy Webb, age 8, and Milo Webb, age 10. Current custody is with the biological father, Gray Webb." She glanced up. "Before we begin, I want to make something clear. This court's only concern is the welfare of these children. Personal grievances, blame, and family drama are not relevant. Is that understood?" Everyone nodded. The Logan attorney went first, painting a picture of Gray's instability, the job loss, the poverty, the inadequate housing. He called a social worker who'd visited Gray's home and noted the peeling paint, the small bedrooms, the sparse furnishings. Jessica Moss cross-examined. Did you observe any safety hazards? Any signs of neglect or abuse? No, the social worker admitted. The home was clean and the children appeared well cared for. Did the children express any desire to leave their father's care? They seemed conflicted, torn between loyalty to their father and awareness of the difficulties in their living situation. The Logan attorney called Charmaine to the stand. She testified about her concerns, her voice breaking when she described watching her grandchildren go without basic necessities. I love Gray, she said, tears streaming. He was my son-in-law. But I watched my daughter choose a life of struggle instead of comfort. And now I'm watching her children suffer the same way. They deserve better. They deserve what Sarah should have had. It was devastating testimony. Gray saw the judge's expression soften. Then Jessica Moss called Gray to the stand. He testified about his 3 years as a single father, the routines they'd built, the love that sustained them. He explained the job at Lakewood, the stability returning to their lives. Mr. Webb, the Logan attorney said during cross-examination, you were terminated from your previous employment for theft. Is that correct? I was accused of theft. I didn't do it. But you were fired. Yes. And you were unable to find work for 3 months. That's correct. During which time you relied on food banks, fell behind on rent, and could barely provide for your children's basic needs. I'd like to take a moment and pause. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Please show a kindness by clicking like and subscribe. It would help our channel so much. Let's continue our story. I kept them fed, kept them housed, kept them in school. Barely. The attorney's voice was sharp. Mr. Webb, don't you think these children deserve more than barely? Gray looked at the judge, then at his children sitting in the gallery. They deserve a father who fights for them, who shows them that setbacks don't define you. That family means standing together when times are hard. Yes, we struggled, but we never stopped being a family. The attorney had more questions, but Gray could see he'd landed his point. When it was over, Judge Moreno called for a recess. I'd like to speak with the children separately, Lucy first, then Milo. Gray watched his daughter walk into the judge's chambers, small and brave, and prayed she'd find the words to explain what home meant. 20 minutes later, Lucy emerged, eyes red from crying. Then Milo went in. The wait was excruciating. Charmaine sat across the hallway, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Edward stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Gray couldn't read either of them anymore. Finally, Milo emerged. Judge Moreno called everyone back into the courtroom. I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony, and I've spoken at length with both children. She looked at her notes, then at the assembled families. This is one of the more difficult cases I've encountered because I believe everyone here genuinely cares about these children's welfare. Gray's heart pounded. Mr. and Mrs. Logan, I understand your concerns. The conditions your grandchildren have been living in are not ideal, but this court has consistently held that parental rights are paramount, unless there is evidence of neglect or abuse. I saw no such evidence. Charmaine made a small sound. Mr. Webb, you've had a very difficult few years. Single parenthood is challenging under the best circumstances, and you've faced extraordinary obstacles. But your children spoke very clearly about their home life, their relationship with you, and their wishes for the future. She paused, and Gray stopped breathing. I'm denying the petition for custody modification. The children will remain in their father's care. However, she held up a hand as relief flooded Gray's face. I am ordering regular visitation with the grandparents, every other weekend, alternating major holidays. This family needs to heal, and these children need all the adults in their lives working together, not against each other. Edward slumped. Charmaine covered her face. Gray felt tears streaming down his cheeks. Additionally, Judge Moreno continued, I'm ordering family counseling. All of you, Mr. Webb, Mr. and Mrs. Logan, and the children. You need professional help navigating this grief and learning to co-parent effectively. She looked at Charmaine. Mrs. Logan, your daughter's death was a tragedy, but punishing her husband won't bring her back. Those children need their father and their grandparents. Find a way to make that work. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. Gray turned to find Lucy and Milo rushing toward him. He caught them both, holding them tight while they cried with relief. Over their heads, he saw Charmaine watching, her expression a mixture of grief and something that might have been understanding. Edward approached slowly. Gray, Edward, we'll see you for the first visitation weekend, 2 weeks from Saturday. The kids would like that. Edward nodded stiffly and turned away. Charmaine lingered a moment longer. She loved you very much, she said quietly. Sarah, even when we couldn't understand why, she loved you. I loved her too. Still do. I know. Charmaine touched Lucy's hair gently, then walked away, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Outside the courthouse, sunshine broke through clouds. Gray stood on the steps with his children, breathing in the spring air, feeling the weight of months lifting. Ice cream, he suggested. We're celebrating. Really? Lucy's eyes widened. Really? Whatever flavor you want. They walked to a nearby shop, and Gray let the kids order double scoops, extravagant and unnecessary, and exactly what they needed. He watched them laugh over their cones, chocolate dripping down their chins, and felt Sarah's presence like a warm hand on his shoulder. We did it, he thought. We made it through. But even as relief washed over him, Gray couldn't shake the question that had haunted him for weeks. Who was his mysterious benefactor? Who had known about Dale Kramer, had connected him with Ray Sullivan, had given him the chance that saved his family? He needed to know, needed to say thank you, needed to understand why someone had cared enough to step into his life when he needed it most. That evening, after the kids were asleep, Gray called Ray Sullivan's cell number. Hey, Gray, everything okay? Better than okay. I just wanted to thank you again for the opportunity. It literally saved my family. You earned it. You're a good worker. Ray, I need to ask you something. The person who recommended me, I need to know who they are. I need to thank them. Silence on the other end. Then, they specifically asked to remain anonymous. I understand that, but, Gray, sometimes in life you receive grace you didn't earn and can't repay. The only way to honor it is to pass it forward. That's what my friend would tell you if they were willing to talk. Sullivan's voice softened. Let it go. Focus on your kids. Build your life. And someday, when you see someone who needs a hand up, remember how this felt. Gray understood then. This wasn't about gratitude or reciprocity. This was about a circle of kindness that extended beyond individual transactions, beyond debts owed and repaid. I will, he promised. I'll pay it forward. That's all anyone can ask. After hanging up, Gray sat in the quiet house, thinking about chains of kindness, about strangers who helped without expectation of recognition, about the invisible threads that connected people's lives in ways they might never fully understand. Somewhere out there, someone had seen his struggle and chosen to help. Not because they knew him, but because they believed in second chances. Gray made a silent promise to that unknown benefactor. He would do the same. He would watch for people struggling under the weight of impossible circumstances, people who just needed one person to believe in them. He would be that person for someone else. 6 months passed. Gray settled into his role at Lakewood Distribution, earning Ray Sullivan's respect and a small raise. The kids adjusted to their new normal, living with Gray during the week, spending alternating weekends with Charmaine and Edward. The counseling sessions were awkward and sometimes painful, but slowly, carefully, they were rebuilding bridges. Charmaine would never be warm, but she was trying. She asked about the kids' homework instead of criticizing their clothes. Edward taught Milo chess and attended his soccer games. They were learning to be grandparents instead of replacement parents. Gray rented a better house, nothing fancy but with a proper yard and bedrooms that didn't leak when it rained. Lucy started piano lessons, Charmaine's gift, offered without strings for the first time. Milo joined a youth soccer league, his smile returning after months of sullen withdrawal. Life found its rhythm. One November evening, Gray was working late at the warehouse, reviewing inventory reports in his office, when Ray Sullivan appeared in the doorway. "Got a minute?" "Of course." Sullivan sat heavily in the spare chair. "Remember when you asked about the person who recommended you?" Gray's pulse quickened. "Yes. They want to meet you if you're willing." "Absolutely. When?" "Saturday morning. Coffee shop on 3rd and Main, 9 a.m. Sullivan handed him a slip of paper. "Just show up, they'll find you." Saturday morning arrived cold and clear. Gray drove to the coffee shop, with nervous energy humming through his veins. Finally, after 6 months of wondering, he'd meet his mysterious benefactor. The shop was small and crowded with weekend customers. Gray ordered coffee and found a table by the window, watching the door. At 9:15, a man in his 70s entered, tall, distinguished, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He spotted Gray and approached with a slight smile. "Gray Webb." Gray stood. "Yes. Are you—" "Robert Moss. Mind if I sit?" "Please." They settled into an awkward silence. Robert Moss ordered tea from the counter, then returned to the table. "I suppose you're wondering why I wanted to meet," he said finally. "I've been wondering who you are for 6 months. I'm nobody special. Just someone who was in a position to help." Robert stirred his tea slowly. 15 years ago, I was where you were. Different circumstances, same desperation. I lost my job at an architecture firm, forced out by a younger partner who wanted my client list. Lost my health insurance just as my wife was diagnosed with cancer. We had 2 young children. I was drowning. Gray listened, seeing his own story reflected back. "A stranger stepped in," Robert continued. "Someone I'd helped years earlier with a minor issue, barely remembered. He paid my wife's medical bills, all of them. Told me the only repayment he wanted was for me to do the same for someone else someday. And you chose me. I've chosen several people over the years when I've had the means. I keep my eyes open for situations where a small intervention might make a large difference." He smiled. "Ray Sullivan was one of mine, years ago. When he mentioned your situation, we both knew we needed to help." Gray's throat tightened. "You saved my family." "You saved your family. I just removed one obstacle. You did the hard work, kept showing up, kept fighting, kept loving those children through impossible circumstances. That was all you." "How did you know about Dale Kramer?" "I know people in industrial supply circles. Kramer's been on people's radar for years. When Ray told me your situation, I made some calls, connected some dots. Clearing your name was the least I could do." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The morning sun streamed through the window, warming the table. "You asked Ray about repayment," Robert said. "About how to thank me. The answer is simple. Pay it forward. When you're stable, when you have something to give, look for someone struggling the way you struggled. Help them. No recognition, no credit. Just help them." "I will." Gray meant it with every fiber of his being. "Good." Robert stood, extending his hand. "That's all I needed to hear. Oh, and one more thing. There's an envelope for you at the counter. Don't open it until you get home." Before Gray could respond, Robert Moss walked out of the coffee shop and disappeared into the Saturday morning crowd. Gray collected the envelope from the confused barista, plain manila, his name written in careful script. He carried it to his car and sat staring at it for several minutes before opening it. Inside was a cashier's check for $10,000 and a handwritten note. Gray, this is not charity. Consider it an investment in your future and in the future of everyone you'll help. Use it however you need. Savings for the children's education, emergency fund, home repairs. I trust your judgment. The only condition, when you're able, do the same for someone else. Not this amount necessarily, but whatever you can afford. The amount matters less than the intention. You're part of a chain now, stretching backward and forward through time, connecting strangers through acts of kindness. Don't break the chain. With respect and faith in you, Robert. Gray sat in his car, tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed by the generosity of strangers, by the invisible web of compassion that had caught him when he was falling. He drove home and showed the check to the kids. Lucy didn't understand the amount, but Milo's eyes went wide. $10,000. Is he rich? I don't know, Gray admitted, but he's generous and he's taught me something important about how we should live. What's that? Lucy asked. That when we're blessed, we have a responsibility to bless others. That kindness isn't a transaction, it's a gift you pass forward. He opened a savings account for the money, earmarking it for the kids' future education and for emergencies, but he also opened a second account, starting with $500 of his own money, labeled simply, "Pay it forward." That became his mission. Over the next year, Gray watched for opportunities. He helped a co-worker whose car broke down, covering the repair bill. He anonymously paid off a layaway account at a toy store, ensuring a struggling mother could give her children Christmas presents. He helped a friend of a friend facing eviction with first month's rent and deposit at a new place. Small acts, but meaningful, each one a ripple spreading outward. On the 2-year anniversary of Robert Moss's gift, Gray took Milo and Lucy to volunteer at a food bank, the same one where he'd stood in line during his darkest months. "Why are we here, Dad?" Milo asked, sorting cans. "Because someone helped us when we needed it. Now it's our turn to help. But we're not rich." "You don't have to be rich to be kind. You just have to pay attention and care." Lucy handed a bag of groceries to an elderly woman who thanked her with tears in her eyes. The girl returned to Gray's side, thoughtful. "That felt good," she said simply. "It does, doesn't it? Remember that feeling, sweetheart." Gray watched his children learn the lesson Robert Moss had taught him, that suffering can make you bitter, or it can make you compassionate, that receiving grace obligates you to extend grace, that the chains binding people together are stronger than the forces trying to tear them apart. 3 years after the custody battle, Charmaine invited them all to Thanksgiving dinner at her house. Edward carved the turkey with unexpected humor, telling stories about Sarah's childhood that made everyone laugh. Charmaine fussed over the children, but without the desperate control that had characterized her earlier behavior. After dinner, she pulled Gray aside. "I owe you an apology, a real one, not the court-ordered kind." "Charmaine, let me finish." Her voice trembled. "I was so angry after Sarah died, angry at God, at fate, at you for surviving when she didn't. I wanted to control something, anything, and the children seemed like the last piece of Sarah I could protect. But I was wrong. You've been a wonderful father, better than I gave you credit for." Gray felt old resentments crumbling. "You were grieving. We all were." "That's generous. More generous than I deserve." She dabbed at her eyes. "Thank you for letting us be part of their lives, for not shutting us out after everything we put you through. They're your grandchildren. They need you." Charmaine hugged him then, a brief, fierce embrace that felt like forgiveness in both directions. Later, driving home with sleepy children in the back seat, Gray thought about the journey from that terrible afternoon in the Hartwell security office to this moment of peace. So much pain, so much fear, so much uncertainty, but also so much grace. So much unexpected kindness from strangers and gradual healing with family. So much love sustaining them through the darkness. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw your car at the food bank today. Well done. Keep the chain going, R. Gray smiled. Robert Moss still watching, still encouraging, still believing in the power of small acts multiplied across countless lives. He typed back, always. Thank you for everything. The response came quickly. Thank you for proving my faith was well placed. 5 years after losing his job, Gray was promoted to operations manager at Lakewood Distribution. The raise allowed him to buy a modest house, not in Charmaine and Edward's neighborhood, but solid and safe, with a yard where Milo practiced soccer and Lucy planted a garden. Milo was 15 now, tall and thoughtful, already talking about college. Lucy was 13, all spark and energy, joining every club and making friends effortlessly. They were good kids, carrying Sarah's best qualities and their own emerging strengths. Gray had never remarried. There had been a few dates, some gentle attempts by friends to set him up, but nothing clicked. He'd made peace with being a single father, with dedicating these years to his children, with the possibility that his great love story might be the one that ended too soon. But he wasn't lonely. He had his kids, his job, a slowly rebuilt relationship with Charmaine and Edward, and his quiet mission of paying forward the kindness he'd received. One evening, Gray was at Milo's soccer game when he noticed a man sitting alone in the stands, watching with an intensity that seemed out of place. The man was younger, maybe early 30s, wearing a jacket that had seen better days. During halftime, the man approached. "Gray Webb." "Yes?" "I'm James Patterson. This is awkward, but Ray Sullivan suggested I talk to you." James shifted his weight nervously. "I'm in a bad spot. Lost my job, have a daughter, and I'm about to lose my apartment. Ray said you might be able to help, or at least point me in the right direction." Gray felt the universe clicking into place, the wheel coming full circle. "Tell me what happened," he said. They talked for the rest of the game, James spilling out a story of downsizing and bad luck and pride, preventing him from asking for help until it was almost too late. Gray heard his own story echoed in James's words, saw his own desperation reflected in the younger man's eyes. After the game, Gray invited James for coffee. They discussed immediate needs, rent assistance, food, job leads. Gray made calls to his network, including Ray Sullivan, who promised to find something at Lakewood. "Why are you helping me?" James asked finally. "You don't know me." Gray thought about Robert Moss, about that coffee shop conversation years ago, about the chain of kindness stretching backward and forward through time. Someone helped me once, when I had nothing, saved my family. All they asked in return was that I do the same for someone else when I could. He met James's eyes. "That's what I'm doing, paying it forward. I don't know if I can repay you." "You can't. That's not how this works. You pay it forward to the next person who needs help. That's the only repayment I want." James's eyes filled with tears. "I promise." Over the next month, Gray helped James get back on his feet. A job at Lakewood, assistance with first month's rent at a new apartment, connections to community resources. Small interventions that made an enormous difference. At Christmas, James sent a card with a photo of his daughter opening presents, along with a note, "You saved my family. I'll never forget it, and I promise to pay it forward." Gray added the card to a box he kept in his closet, filled with similar notes and photos from people he'd helped over the years. Each one a reminder of what was possible when strangers chose kindness over indifference. On Christmas Eve, after the kids were asleep, Gray sat alone with his memories of Sarah. Her photo still held pride of place on the mantel, young and laughing, arms around him at some long-ago celebration. "We did it," he whispered to her image. "We raised them right. They're going to be okay." He imagined her response, the way she'd tilt her head and smile at him. I never doubted you. Well, maybe a little, but you proved me right. His phone chimed. A text from Robert Moss. Rare, but always welcome. Merry Christmas, Gray. I'm proud of you. Gray typed back, Merry Christmas. Thank you for everything. The chain continues. That's all I ever wanted to hear. Keep going. Gray looked at the Christmas tree, at the modest but genuine gifts beneath it, at the home he'd built from the ashes of loss. He thought about the journey from desperation to stability, from isolation to community, from receiving grace to extending it. The weight of tomorrow, which had once seemed crushing, now felt manageable. Not easy, parenthood and life would never be easy, but possible, sustainable, even joyful. Because someone had believed in him when no one else did, because he'd learned to believe in others the same way, because kindness, it turned out, was the most powerful force in the universe when you let it compound across lives and years. Gray Webb turned off the lights and headed to bed, grateful for the strangers who'd become angels, for the children sleeping safely upstairs, for the chance to begin again and to help others do the same. The chain of kindness stretched behind him into the past and ahead into the future, connecting him to people he'd never meet, binding together stories of struggle and redemption across time. And that, he thought as sleep pulled him under, was the closest thing to grace this world offered. The quiet gift of strangers paying it forward, over and over, until broken things became whole again. 10 years later, Gray stood in the audience at Milo's college graduation, watching his son cross the stage to accept his degree in social work. Lucy sat beside him, home from her first year at art school, squeezing his hand with excitement. Charmaine and Edward were there too, older and softer, beaming with grandparental pride. They'd become genuine family over the years, the wounds of the past scarred over into something like understanding. After the ceremony, Milo found them in the crowd. "I have an announcement," he said, gathering everyone close. "I've been accepted to a graduate program in nonprofit management. I'm going to start an organization that helps single parents facing crisis, job loss, housing insecurity, family court issues. Everything you went through, Dad." Gray felt his throat close. "I'm calling it the Umbrella Project," Milo continued, "because everyone needs someone to keep them dry during the storm." Lucy grinned. "I'm designing the logo, yellow umbrellas, lots of them." Gray looked at his children, these miraculous humans who'd witnessed his struggle and transformed it into purpose, and felt Sarah's presence stronger than he had in years. This was what she'd dreamed of, not wealth or status, but children who understood that suffering could breed compassion, that receiving help obligated you to extend help. "Robert Moss would love this," he said quietly. "Who's Robert Moss?" Lucy asked. Gray realized he'd never told them the full story. So that evening, over celebratory dinner, he shared it all: the mysterious benefactor, the coffee shop meeting, the chain of kindness stretching back through generations. "So everything that happened," Milo said slowly, "all the help you gave people over the years, that all started because some stranger decided to help you?" "Yes. And you never got to properly thank them." "I thanked them by doing the same for others. That's what they wanted." Milo nodded, something clicking into place. "The Umbrella Project is going to work the same way. We'll help people, but we'll also teach them to help others, build a network of people paying it forward." "Your mother would be so proud," Charmaine said softly, tears in her eyes. That night, Gray called Ray Sullivan, now retired, but still in touch. "Ray, you'll never guess what Milo's planning." He explained the Umbrella Project. Sullivan laughed, delighted. "That's perfect. Robert would love it. In fact," Sullivan paused, "I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Robert passed away last year. Left instructions with his attorney about various ongoing commitments. One of them was a fund for young people starting nonprofits focused on helping others. I'll connect Milo with the foundation. Gray sat in silence, processing the news. Robert Moss, his guardian angel, was gone. And yet his influence continued, rippling forward through time exactly as he'd intended. Thank you for telling me, Ray. Thank you for being exactly who Robert believed you could be. After hanging up, Gray went to his closet and pulled out the box of cards and photos from people he'd helped over the years. Dozens of them now, small testimonies to the difference one person could make. He added Milo's graduation program to the box, along with a note to himself. The chain continues. Sarah would be proud. Robert would be proud. I'm proud. 20 years after losing everything, Gray Webb understood that he'd gained something far more valuable than what he'd lost. Not money or status or security, though those had their place, but purpose. Legacy. The knowledge that suffering could be transformed into service, that brokenness could become the foundation for helping others heal. His children would carry that lesson forward. Their children would carry it further still, and somewhere in the future, people Gray would never meet would benefit from a chain of kindness that started with a stranger in a coffee shop who believed in second chances. The umbrella would keep spreading, one person at a time, sheltering strangers from storms they couldn't weather alone. And that, Gray thought, was the best possible way to honor Robert Moss's gift, by making sure it never stopped giving. For everyone who has ever received unexpected kindness from a stranger, and for everyone who has chosen to pay that kindness forward, this story is your story too. The chain continues because you keep it going. The umbrella keeper is all of us. Sometimes we all need shelter, not just from rain, but from the storms of life, the bad days, the hard moments, the times when we feel utterly alone. In memory of everyone who's ever stood in the rain, feeling hopeless. In honor of everyone who's ever stopped to ask, "Are you okay?" In gratitude for the quiet heroes who transform grief into kindness, pain into purpose, and one simple act into a movement that changes lives. May we all be umbrellas for someone else's storm. God bless you.